In a world inhabited by anthropomorphic animals, Belle Lablack stands out as the only known human. On her quest to uncover the truth about her identity, Belle receives a warning from a beast man that this mission might be his last. The day before, around Lake Chaser, a significant commotion in the water attracted the attention of the local inhabitants. One resident speculated that the river had risen, causing a sea seed to bloom and spread poison, transforming the fresh water into salt water. Some bulls had already succumbed to this condition. The rats, desperate for help, sought assistance from a nomad. However, instead of the nomad, a girl was sent, which caused unease among the population. This girl, known for being expelled from City Park for causing trouble, drew attention wherever she went, as no one had seen a being like her before. When the envoy stepped into the crowd, everyone scrutinized the human from head to toe, searching for any fur, horns, or animal ears that might reveal her origin. The more they examined her, the more confused they became. Unperturbed by the scrutiny, Belle Lablack introduced herself as the envoy sent by Master Cyan Lablack. The elder rat, who had requested help, stepped forward, introducing himself as the guardian of Weatherwheel Town. He pointed to the center of Lake Chaser, where he described a creature with arms as sturdy as tree trunks and a body impervious to swords and spears, spewing poisonous ink from its mouth. Belle's master had speculated that the creature was likely a Negroni, but it was hard to be certain from a distance. Determined to get closer, Belle planned to investigate, especially since flower flesh was her favorite food. Hearing this, the inhabitants muttered among themselves, calling her a wild beast. Ignoring the insults, Belle placed her heavy bag on the ground, removed part of her clothing to lighten her load, and shocked the crowd by sliding into the water. As she neared the creature, a tentacle grabbed her and pulled her underwater. Moments later, Belle ripped off the tentacle and hurled it to the surface. However, the battle was far from over. Realizing the challenge was not ordinary, the Negroni emerged from the depths, revealing its enormous stature. Belle drew her sword, and the pressure in the air from her handling was so intense that it vibrated through her body, grounding her feet on the wooden floor. The beast attacked with brutal strength, and Belle struggled to dodge the blows, which were both powerful and extremely fast. In response, she commanded her sword, Runding, to sing. This command evoked a pinkish energy from the weapon, resembling petals. Obsessed, Belle Lablack kissed Runding. After the sword's song, her movements became lighter and more precise, and her cuts were fatal to the Negroni's hardened scales, which had previously been impenetrable. Now, Belle was slicing each tentacle with the precision of a sharp axe cutting wood. Overcoming the initial obstacles, the warrior gained access to the monster's trunk. With unimaginable dexterity, she made 3 rapid slashes to the enemy's neck in a single motion, causing it to roar in agony as blood gushed, reddening the water. As the Negroni suffered the severe injury, the smell of salt water reached Belle's nostrils. Soon, the deep cuts on the creature's body burst open, releasing a poisonous rain. The lake's inhabitants hurried to save their food from contamination, while the beautiful creature grabbed Belle with its last tentacle. Belle Lablack questioned why the Negroni had come there, and it responded with tears in its eyes, saying it only wanted to return to the sea, its home. Unfortunately, it could no longer fulfill this desire. All that remained was to spread the seeds of its body before its death. Hearing this, Belle apologized and cut the tentacle holding her. The movement caused her to fall, and with the gained momentum, she plunged her sword one last time into the doomed creature. Despite the devastation caused by the battle, the elder rat promised to send the reward to Belle as soon as possible. She asked to take a seed and a tentacle of the Negroni home, because, as she had said, she loved flower flesh. Once again, the surrounding animals were shocked by the bestial behavior of the human. But the guardian of Weatherwheel Tower did not oppose the heroine's wish. Later, on the way back, Belle lamented that the inhabitants of Lake Chaser would destroy all the Negroni's seeds. She threw the one she saved into a river, thinking she might need to fight in the region where the current would carry the seed someday. Finally home, Belle greeted her master, Cyan, who was trying to light a fire using the friction of two objects, even though it would have been much simpler to use magic. This slightly irritated Belle, as did the fact that her master had sent her to defeat the Negroni instead of going personally to save the region without causing any damage. To avoid souring the mood, she threw the tentacle on the table and showed it to the beast man, who praised the clean cut of his pupil. However, he noted that it was possible to sharpen the blade even more and focus all her concentration into a single strike, something Belle had yet to learn. Nevertheless, he believed that eating the defeated creature's corpse was a way of honoring the dead, even though a Negroni was not just made of flesh, but also a resistant leather material that Belle planned to use to make shoes. While eating, Cyan added different sauces to the plate, causing Belle to complain that he was ruining the fun. But he saw it differently, as this mix caused an explosion of flavors. Since the leader was so sentimental, the pupil asked him to cook next time, but she was completely ignored. At the end of the meal, Belle questioned why the Negroni had left the sea, considering it had expressed a desire to return before dying. Cyan believed the Negroni was trying to fulfill its purpose as a flower, spreading seeds that were not just flowers. In this world, all matter mixes with everything else. Nothing is created. Everything is transformed. After dinner, Belle cleared the dishes while her master smoked a pipe that emanated his magic. Saddened by the earlier events, Belle lamented that the lake dwellers were afraid of her, wishing that Cyan had gone in her place. Her master believed he had nothing to teach a plant, and thus couldn't serve as an Enola, whose role is to instruct others. Eager to leave this place, Belle wanted to continue her search for beings of her own kind. However, the beast man emphasized that he had never seen another human in his long life. Belle believed that at this rate, the army of the insatiable void would take her away sooner or later. According to her master, these beings could no longer enjoy the world, and Belle saw it as her end if they caught her. To this day, she had never felt she belonged in this world because she had never seen anyone like her, while other races despised her, which was cruel. Curiously, Master Cyan identified a certain nostalgia in his pupil's words, a platonic love for her hometown, the desire for utopia, or the painful inability to love oneself and the place where one is. The nostalgia for what was never lived is a yearning for self-knowledge. Belle asked for a way to cure this nostalgia, so Cyan advised her to journey to the land of Schwert, the country of the sword. Although there were no humans there, she might find a world truly her own. But first, she needed to go to Park City to complete the challenges and become a nomad. Shortly after, as she got out of the bath, Belle reflected on her master's words, who said that traveling meant putting her existence at stake, a game where no one could help her, not even her Enola, because no one, no matter how close, was Belle LeBlanc. With this in mind, Belle knew that one day her life with the teacher would end, and that would only be the beginning. Above all, she dreamed of a world where she belonged. Meanwhile, Runding shone like the night, and the briefest touch transported Belle to fragments of her childhood memories, when the anthropomorphic beings were even crueler to her as a child. Some even said she was born from a stone, and the beast's children tormented her simply for being different and possessing extraordinary strength. In this distorted memory, Belle embraced a couple she thought were her parents, but they had animal ears. Distraught, she ran through the crystal blue night towards a castle, traversing the long paths of that labyrinth of rock and iron. During her wandering, she found a chained sword in a dirty storage room, seeing it as a friend. Upon touching the weapon, Belle felt the warmth of that pink energy in her hands for the first time, something that would accompany her for life. Without a second thought, she stole Runding from the castle and fled past the guards until she reached a moon that awakened Runding's desire to pierce the world. One of the guards stopped the child, and when she refused to let go of the sword, she was imprisoned with it in one of the castle cells. When she woke up next to Runding, Belle Lablack hugged the only friend who understood her in this world. At dawn, the humans scared away the rats, delivering the reward to Master Cyan's door. This time, she decided not to blame anyone for her loneliness. With money in hand, Cyan commented that food would not be a problem for a while, but his student didn't care about that. Determined, she declared she would go to park to become a nomad. With that, the master asked her to bring her sword so he could teach her the final lesson. According to Cyan, one cannot become a nomad without receiving a curse. Depending on the life that bears it, this curse can take many forms, and it would be Belle's first trial haunting her as she followed her path. These curses are passed through nomad blood, so the master cut his finger with Belle, repeating the gesture. Thus, the two touched their wounds, and the master asked the purpose of the apprentice's journey. She expressed her desire to know her roots, meet people like her, and finally connect to this world. With that said, the procedure ended and Cyan advised Belle to embrace this curse, always hoping that one day it would become a blessing. As he spoke, the beast man's face distorted into a magical expression, and Belle realized he was disappearing. Cyan said he was no longer necessary in the apprentice's life, and that this way she would not discover his secret motive. Finally, he wished Belle Lablack to visit places he never managed to visit. In a way, Belle felt betrayed by the master as she watched him dissipate in front of her, venting her frustration by stating that he was playing with her mind. On the other hand, this was Cyan's role as Enola, and fulfilling this purpose was the reason for his existence. In that dark time in a dirty and forgotten cell, Belle was told by Cyan that her parents would not come for her because he would be responsible for her from now on, teaching the child to use the sword she insisted on not letting go of. Runding carried the spell Irwen, whose true meaning was utopia. In the end, Belle states that she loves Cyan, then uses Runding to attack her master and fulfill her purpose. The scene then shifts, revealing that Belle was born from one of those stones, resembling eggs made of purple rock. Reflecting on her identity, Belle considers her homeland to be the sky, a realization she finds cruelly ironic. She feels like a human with roots in the heavens, forever unable to truly reach her origins. Meanwhile, a man watches Belle as she sleeps, holding a magical clock. When Belle's cord glows, she wakes up in the quartz forest, where the oak rock has turned blue. Despite the long time since she last visited this place, she doesn't miss it. Suddenly, a young Rabidia tugs at her clothes. Startled, Belle offers the rabbit some of her tea, believing that encountering such a creature signifies good luck. Still, she decides it's not wise to wander around with the animal, so she leaves her mug with it and bids it farewell. After a long walk home, Belle Lablack arrives in Park City in the land of Schwart. As she approaches the population, she encounters the usual prejudice from the anthropomorphic beings. Walking through the boulevard under West Bell, she is impressed by the city's beauty and hustle and bustle. Smiling, she decides to eat. Inside a tavern, the same old scenario unfolds as the beast men refer to her as the traceless human. The bartender, less prejudiced than the others, speculates that Belle might be a lost mermaid from the castle. Belle thinks this might be better since people always look at her with disdain regardless of her origins. Putting that aside, she orders food and an iced flower tea. Sensing her discomfort, the bartender informs her that everyone here follows the law of the theme, where each individual is destined to be good or evil. If Belle doesn't follow this order, she could end up dead. Feeling mocked, Belle demands not to be called little girl. The beast man apologizes and introduces himself as Haggis, the owner of Amaretto. He then asks what Belle knows about the land of Schwart. Belle explains that she learned Park City is divided between the good top dogs and the evil underdogs, with the good living inside the castle and the evil outside. This leads Haggis to his point. The law of the theme cannot be sustained without this division, and no one challenges this belief. Haggis advises Belle to find out which side she belongs to as soon as possible. However, Belle states that she doesn't need to go through this process because she will soon leave the country to become a nomad, which is why she came to Park City. Haggis believes that God will never allow that and explains that it is not the king of the castle who truly rules this country, but God. At that moment, Belle is struck by a severe headache, and distorted images of her master flood her mind. Haggis asks what happened, and she explains that she had visions of Deus Ex Machina, though she doesn't really know what it means, having heard the story from a heartless fool long ago. These visions reveal to Belle that she killed someone, but don't clarify who or why. Amidst this confusion, the Rabidia from earlier is thrown into the tavern for causing trouble with some secret agents. Haggis asks what they intend to do with the child, and one of them explains that the brat disappeared and gnawed on his sword, causing a lot of trouble. Belle assumes these are evil Solists. The beast men draw their swords, declaring they will feast on the rabbit, believing that killing it will bring them fame and make their swords unbeatable. Before the worst can happen, Belle hurls the bench she was sitting on, knocking down the smartest Solist, and draws her sword, Runding. Channeling Cyan, she asserts that those who can't distinguish being bad from doing bad don't deserve a sword. The Solists attack Belle, but although she handles them easily, some magic prevents her from retaliating, reminding her of Cyan's curse. Lastly, a Solist tries to attack the Rabidia, but before Belle can intervene, Haggis steps in, declaring that everyone understands her strength and skill, and it's enough now. He notes that the beast men's swords will wither because they are on a one-way path. Outside the tavern, good top dog Solists gather, prompting Haggis to ask Belle if she has a dog tag, a license tag. Obviously, she doesn't, so the bar owner tells her to flee immediately, warning her that she's in trouble without a license, and they won't let it slide. Seeing that the rabbit has fled, Belle leaves some coins to pay for her meal and surrenders to the authorities. Transported on a giant turtle with a saddle on its shell, she is taken to the castle, commenting to Runding that they are returning inside the city after so long. In her youth, Lablack remembers little of this place, save for the moment she discovered her sword. Confined to a cell within the castle, Lablack is informed by a representative that her case will be reviewed once the candle beside her extinguishes. Until then, she remains imprisoned. As she reflects on her childhood, she recalls being locked in a similar room, and now, due to her curse, she is unable to cut anything. She understands that this is her first trial and had agreed to it when it was revealed to her. Her Enola had made it abundantly clear, and thus she can only accept her fate. Back then, she had waited for someone to free her from prison, but she no longer remembers who it was. The person's face is blurred by magic, making it unrecognizable. The challenge now is that she is no longer a child, and no one will come to her aid. Staring at the door won't make it open any faster. However, Runding possesses a power that grants Lablack her freedom. Once liberated, she asks the jailer to summon a soloist named Gaff. Frightened, the small creature has no choice but to comply with her request. Back at the Amorite, a boy inquires if Haggis' sword was broken, to which he explains that his sword withered long ago. It was, in fact, the swords of some soloists who had suffered damage and were recuperating in the guest room. As he speaks, the old man realizes he is talking to Adonis, someone he hadn't seen in years and didn't expect to encounter there. Adonis expresses a desire to speak with the soloists. Seizing the moment, Haggis inquires if Adonis had visited his family, but Adonis clarifies that he has no intention of doing so. As he ascends the stairs, screams from outside alert them to the approach of the insatiable Void's army. Haggis speculates that they probably detected their own kind and believes someone from Park City will join this army today, someone who can no longer savor life's pleasures. Meanwhile, Lablack is greeted by Gaff Shandy, who had arranged for her absolution as a personal favor to Cyan, who had entrusted him with his apprentice. Additionally, Gaff hands her a dog tag and asks her to engrave her personal spell on it. Lablack questions why an elite soloist would go to such lengths to aid his master, and he counters by asking if she harbors any resentment towards Enola. She responds no, especially since Enola made her forget everything about him. Nevertheless, she refuses the dog tag because she intends to become a nomad. Gaff emphasizes that she cannot embark on her journey without first making a contract with the king, requiring her to serve as a soloist in this land for a period. Belle laments that her curse has affected her sword, preventing her from cutting anything, while Runding could slice through anything with his blade, be it a delicate flower or the mightiest warrior from distant tribes. In response, Gaff finds it troubling that she mentions flowers and humans without distinguishing between them. To him, that is the true curse, but accustomed to her bestial nature, Lablack lightly mocks his words and explains that her sword feels like a glove when she touches things, and the friction against Runding's blade is always the same, regardless of the material. Considering Runding's involvement, Gaff insists that the dog tag will be valuable on her journey and may help unravel the mystery of her curse. Reluctantly, Lablack accepts the gift. By chance, a rabbit appears, gnawing on something next to her, making Lablack think it came to thank her for saving it, which leads Gaff to realize the source of the confusion. He feels honored that Belle has a Rabisha accompanying her. Soon, the two bid farewell, and the Beast Man informs her that he will arrange an audience with the king. As she heads to the courtyard, she hears a song from the agriculture musicians, evoking a deep sense of nostalgia as she used to practice her instrument often, even though her music never made anything grow. Gaff then inquires if Belle will visit her parents, and she sorrowfully replies that she still cannot see them. Later, since the elite soloist arranged her accommodation, she takes the opportunity to enjoy a luxurious bath with Rabisha. In the bathtub, she discovers he is male and asks where he wants to go. Since the animal cannot speak, she simply hugs him. Near the audience chamber, Gaff sees the dog tag inscribed with Lablack, which means uncommon, and comments that Sion was the first to register that name. Suddenly, she hears a voice stating that as a short musiker, she must entertain God to complete the contract, because the king embodies God's will, and the doors of her journey will only open in the presence of royalty. Soon, Lablack is led to the throne room, and the voice explains that the court of justice consists of 3 halls: the dance hall, the throne room, and the sword arena, forming the crest of the land of Schwart. Before her stands Yggdrasil, the sword tree god, a cancerous sword that has been growing since the dawn of history. The priest king resides with God and has 2 faces, top dog and underdog, reflecting the world's dual nature through the king's form. As King Rawhide manifests, the tree does not regard her as it does the king. Runding points it at the tree, but nothing changes. This action stirs murmurs in the court of justice, and Gaff announces that a student of the renowned Enola Scion, Lablack, wishes to participate in the contract ritual to become a nomad and find her roots, her lecturer, and her teacher in this world. With that, the king grants her the chance to make a contract and asks her to name her instrument. Lablack raises her sword and declares it to be the work of Dram, the famous sword composer Runding. Rawhide states that Lablack's skills as a Schwertmusiker will be tested in a duel against one of the 4 champions, Cur Royale, the one whose sword was shattered by the human. Far away, in the haunted land where the shadows of the insatiable void army roam, Sion meets a woman named Dram inside a secluded tent. Dram confesses that encountering Enola was the last thing she expected, especially since his youngling had recently departed from this world. The master responds, noting that while Enola's body somehow escaped fate, his sword wasn't as fortunate. He asks Dram, who originally forged the weapon, to repair it, believing only she possesses the skill to do so. Changing the subject, Dram finds it amusing that Enola still clings to illusions. She then asks about Gaff Shandy, curious if he had discovered the secret to creating the sacred ashes. Xian explains that Gaff has matured and is destined to become the next royal prince, yet he remains ignorant of the sacred ashes creation. However, Belle Lablack has gone to the castle to uncover this secret. Belle is seen as the answer to their prayers, inheriting Xian's legacy and bearing a sword forged by Dren. With guidance from Enola, Belle will explore uncharted territories. Dram emphasizes that someone skeptical of conventional wisdom, like the Void Army, is necessary to challenge the land's principles, including Deus Ex Machina. The next day, Belle stands before King Rawhide, ready to face her opponent, Cur Royale, one of the fiscal soloists. Cur did not expect a rematch under these circumstances, but he seizes the opportunity. Lablack recalls breaking her blade, but is confident in her abilities. However, the curse she bears prevents her from cutting anything, jeopardizing her chances of victory. Raising a new sword, the centaur explains he used the remnants of his broken blade to forge a new one called Lived. According to him, the experience of having his sword broken made him stronger, not weaker. He thanks Lablack and commits everything he represents to this duel. Lablack draws Runding, which radiates a rosy aura of flying petals. In a secluded part of the audience, Adonis watches the clash, surprising Gaff, who thought Adonis hated short music pieces. In reality, Adonis came to see Xian's apprentice, known as the Little One. With Runding in hand, Belle Lablack feels capable of overcoming any challenge. Kissing the blade, Iruin's spell manifests, and the human charges at the centaur, initiating the battle. The energy emanating from Lived, Cur's sword, feels menacing, but the girl maintains her calm demeanor, laughing as she duels Cur as if enjoying it. The centaur unleashes a spell from his sword, but she dodges and swiftly counterattacks, striking his rib. The audience assumes the fight is over, believing no one could rise after such a precise blow. However, Runding's curse prevents her from delivering a fatal cut. Provoked, Care Royale, Ire Lablack searches her mind for a winning strategy. Enraged, the soloist delivers a powerful strike, making Lablack's hands bleed as she blocks with her weapon. Still, she manipulates the situation, gaining momentum and isolating her opponent's weapon. With no chance of victory and humiliated, Care Royale kneels, begging for his end. Lablack, unable to deliver the final blow due to her curse, seals her victory another way. Approaching Lived, she cuts the blade in half, causing absolute terror in the soloist, who lets out a scream as agonizing as the worst blow suffered. The audience questions the human's honor and reverence, demanding she face the hammer of fear as punishment. Without bowing to the crowd, Lablack defiantly challenges anyone to come down to the arena and settle it personally with her. She ends her challenge with a burst of laughter. Care Royale acknowledges her glory, and Yggdrasil, the God Tree Sword, announces Belle Lablack's success in the contract ritual. After the anger subsides, the centaur acknowledges her strength and withdraws. Arrogantly, Lablack reaffirms her strength and exits. King Rawhide then accepts the human as a soloist, asking her to honor the land's crest by playing 3 pieces of short music to soothe God. However, he warns that this alone is not enough. She must also find the chance, a concept Lablack does not understand. The king advises her to observe the curse she bears. By doing so, she will receive a blessing. After the high priest's speech, the winner is treated by healers alongside Gaff. Using the sacred ashes, one of Lablack's wounds heals instantly, astonishing her. Gaff explains the ashes' regenerative properties and personally applies more to her hand, making her believe that even pain can seem like an illusion. While treating her, Gaff shows patience, despite her questioning the method she used to end her duels. An individual's sword is an extension of their body, practically everything they are. This attitude places Lablack in even worse isolation in the public eye, but she feels she has no choice due to her curse, which prevents Runding from tearing her rival's flesh. Meanwhile, Rawhide confronts a beast man, questioning if he intends to sacrifice the girl for his own selfish desires as revenge against Yggdrasil, the god who cursed him. This beast man, once a priest of royal blood, had defied God and become Enola, escaping the kingdom as a nomad. With this in mind, let's continue. The two faces of God, top dog and underdog, question what the beast man gained from his rebellious journey. Receiving no response, underdog accuses him of seeking to destroy God, while top dog believes the girl with common sense will go far. Bridging the gap between these perspectives, King Rawhide decrees that the beastman be freed to live as one of the dead. This way, he will be safe from God's persecution, as no one pursues the dead. With the decree made, Cyan Lablax's mask shatters and falls to the ground. Enola leaves without a word to Yggdrasil. Top dog and underdog bid farewell to their younger brother. Nightbell, weary from her intense duel at the Arena of Swords, rests nearby. As always, Rabish gnaws on whatever he finds appealing. Using his rabbit teeth, he chews on the Stein der Weisen, the Philosopher's Stone. Upon tasting something intriguingly good, the animal transforms into a nearly human form. Displaying his impatience, he criticizes the foolishness of leaving such an important element exposed like a jar of cookies. Nevertheless, he opens the bedroom window and sends his formulas to spread the news he desires. Without delay, he finds what he was searching for and teleports. Meanwhile, the soloists defeated by Lablac receive the sacred ashes from Adonis to revive their swords. Despite the tempting promise, one of them senses something odd in the man's speech about testing the evil within us. On the other hand, his colleague doesn't care. He just wants his sword back to take revenge on the traceless one. Using an item stolen from Rabish, he plans to lure and kill two birds with one stone. Suddenly, the literal rabbit appears, stating that a simple calculation is enough to exterminate all the soloists. Using illusory magic, Rabish makes the enemies believe they are on fire. Meanwhile, he retrieves his watch and wishes the underdogs sweet nightmares. Before leaving, he spots a delicacy from the land of Schwart and takes it along. Outside, judging by the monster's face, the singing rabbit presumes the void specters are having fun, but doesn't intend to get involved, knowing his beloved, sensible girl wouldn't easily fall victim to purgatory dreams. The next day, fully recovered from her battle wounds, Lablac receives news that the evil soloist will attack the boulevard under East at any moment, targeting the area where her parents live. Outraged, Lablac questions why Gaff didn't inform her sooner. But he explains that only those chosen by divine summoning should be involved, a selection about to begin at the castle. Impatient to wait, Lablac grabs Runding to leave, but first asks what happens if she isn't summoned for this task. Gaff informs her that she will have to pay the weight of her sword in gold coins. Laughing at the prospect of going bankrupt, Lablac says goodbye and leaves, provoking a genuine smile from the beast man. Upon reaching the attack's focus, she walks among the war's wreckage and learns that the residents were taken by the invaders. She rushes outside the gate, suspecting this is a dispute over the musician farmers, as the attackers lack the means to develop their agriculture, making it a matter of life and death to have the musicians in their hands. Further ahead, she confirms her deduction upon seeing the people of Boulevard under East imprisoned in mobile jails. Without hesitation, Lablac draws Runding and takes down the soldiers she encounters. Seeing his men fall one by one, the invasion leader conjures a magic circle beneath the human, but the spell is broken by Runding. Taking advantage of the distraction caused by his soldiers, the leader successfully flees, just as Park's troops finally arrive. Curiously, Lablac manages to cut through the prison's shell, freeing the prisoners. Among the detainees, her parents radiate happiness at seeing their daughter after so long. Equally joyful, Lablac notices how much they've aged. At that moment, a small beast girl hugs Lablac's parents, revealing they are also her parents. In a mix of emotions, the human asks the little one's name, which is Belaine, meaning Belle's younger sister. Happy to have repaid her upbringing, Lablak announces to her parents that she will become a nomad, returning home at night. She realizes she lost her necklace during the battle, but decides to leave it be. Meanwhile, one of the invaders flaunts the stolen cord from the human. Suddenly, the rabbit appears before them to ask a favor. He then returns to the city and introduces himself to Lablak as Kitty, the owl, surprising her by already knowing her name. The rabbit thanks her for taking care of the other rabbit, Kitty the Nothing, as the Rabia are all from the same family. They arrive at On the Rocks, a place where nomads gather, and Lablak feels strangely at home. Kitty requests a song from the bar's swallow, a traveling troubadour who sings for a living. The human doesn't understand the purpose of singing without the intent to build something like the farmers. Kitty then introduces her to the most genuine form of art, provoking emotions in Lablak she didn't even know existed. The melody evokes the power of pain and redemption, and Belle weeps, thinking of her parents. Kitty repeats a line the swallow sang, "May the curse one day become a blessing." By the irony of fate, the swallow can only speak when singing, and this is her curse. However, in the brief moment she sang, her beautiful voice told a story about the little one. That short period was enough to teach Belle that her parents took her name from this song, because little one is what Belle means. Similarly, as Cyan had said, Lablak means uncommon. In a way, it seemed these people predicted their child's destiny. Overwhelmed with strong feelings, the young woman covers her eyes with her hands and loses sight of Kitty, who leaves her necklace on the table. At the king's court, Belle stood proudly, awaiting her reward for her recent battle. She had single-handedly fended off numerous duelists, demonstrating her formidable strength and causing them to flee. The king congratulated her and bestowed upon her a boon. Her sword would never bend or break. However, before this could happen, she had to place her sword on a scale. After doing so, she retrieved her sword and left the court. Later, Belle walked through the city streets with her teacher's friend. He asked if she had seen her parents. Belle replied that she had, but doubted she would see them again. Nonetheless, she felt relieved and refreshed knowing they were well. He then told her about the 4 best duelists, mentioning that he was one of them. He also mentioned someone named Tiziano, who was currently missing. He speculated that Tiziano, possibly a mermaid who could change everything from appearance to aura, might have changed gender and was hiding. Belle then asked about the other person, and he explained that the other was a special case known as Adonis. The next day, Belle was walking and heard sounds resembling dogs bark puppies, and was delighted by how small and cute they were. She brought them a plate of fruit to eat. We then see Belle with her teacher's friend again. He told her not to intervene when they saw some soldiers beating a boy named Adonis, accusing him of being a sword thief and demanding to know where he hid the swords. Adonis did not answer or fight back. Shandy intervened, asking why they were beating him, as this did not seem like a duel between swordsmen. They told him that Adonis was not a duelist and would not be treated like one. Seeking a decanting to Worthch, Adonis was struck with contempt. Shandy dispersed them, and Adonis thanked him before leaving, leaning against the wall for support. Belle asked who started this trouble, and Shandy explained that Adonis took a sword from a recently deceased duelist after a battle, despite the relatives' demand for its return. Shandy was unsure of Adonis' motivations, as he always took swords from fallen warriors on battlefields and bought swords from those who abandoned the blade. In Bean City, Belle sat and drank tea at home, wondering why Adonis didn't wield a sword of his own. Was he unable to? She then remembered those gloves, which made him seem as if he was afraid to touch the sword directly. The next morning, Belle arrived at a large building. The soldiers told her that feeding wild plants was useless, as puppies wither quickly. They pointed to Adonis and said he lost his temper over some puppies. Belle became very angry. Her body glowed, and she drew her deadly sword, facing one of the soldiers and knocking him away. The others then attacked her, but she struck them all down. Adonis watched in amazement at her strength, while she was furious about what they had done to the animals. She extended her hand to Adonis, as he couldn't stand up on his own. He remarked that this was the second time she had seen him in this condition. Then she saw one of the puppies still alive in a tree and apologized to it for not being able to save them from death, saying that this was their fate. She then asked Adonis for his home address so she could take him home because he was unable to walk. He leaned on her and asked how, and he told her that they grow from corpses. He then called his friend, a strange creature named Bamboo, who was said to eat itself constantly, so it never existed in one place. In those moments, something strange happened, and she found herself in another place. She looked around and wondered where Adonis was, noticing there were no windows in the room. Suddenly, a door appeared out of nowhere, and he came out, apologizing and saying she could relax. He then pulled out some magical bandages and wrapped them around his arm. When he looked at her, he noticed that she was staring at him intensely, so he invited her to. She then asked him why he took swords from others. At that moment, many swords appeared, and he told her that he had more rooms with even more swords. She asked if he had added something to their enchantments. He pointed to a mark, a question mark, saying that for those who doubted, he could change any sword to suit him. This was his enchantment, and his other name, Sir Pissinghind. He continued, explaining that he pitied the owners of these swords because they fought and died, seemingly unjustly. He wanted to cleanse the world of monsters and bandits, and he reminded her not to have pity or mercy on them, recalling how they killed the puppies. But once he added his mark to the sword, no one but him could wield it because it changed the meaning of the enchantment. Babelle's suspicious, and she doubted anyone could reach them. Meanwhile, the creature called Bamboo transmitted, everyone calling their names, and Adonis told Belle to get ready. Meanwhile, the teens were preparing for battle, with Belle at the forefront. In another scene, Belle and Adonis were in a room. He instructed her to follow the art movements in the teen battle, referring to the faceless. Belle asked him to drop that title and call her Belle. Adonis joked and changed his voice to mimic the king, saying they would no longer call her faceless from now on. Belle laughed and called him a fool. Belle, confused, asked about this. Adonis explained that their battlefield was the catacombs, which the evil ones considered sacred ground, just as the good ones viewed the castle. The evil ones knew more ways in and out than he could count, not to mention all the passages inside. The opening team would fight to secure their way, that the balance would change significantly. Meanwhile, the young rabbit boy thought to himself that he needed to be patient until the threads of fate brought her back to him. Suddenly, LeBlanc appeared using a magic spell and said he didn't intend to harm the prince of the wandering land of Denari. The young rabbit boy replied that he hadn't heard from LeBlanc in a long time. LeBlanc told him that he no longer had a place to wander. The rabbit boy responded not to speak like a man who reached his land with sheer determination, searching for the world's mysteries. LeBlanc explained he came only to ask about the intention of those who flee from logic. The rabbit boy said he was sent to observe and judge logic. The phase of fleeing would come later, and if controlling its danger was not possible, he would kill her and anyone who knew her. LeBlanc replied that to leave this land, he must inquire about its logic. The rabbit boy explained that it all concerned Deus Ex Machina, a sacred symphony of iron and blood resisting kings. LeBlanc confirmed this and mentioned that many would fiercely attempt to control logic, potentially destroying it at its inception. The rabbit boy stated that he wouldn't allow this to happen and asked if that was why LeBlanc came to him. LeBlanc answered affirmatively. The rabbit boy then asked why LeBlanc didn't go himself, realizing that LeBlanc was under some spell or curse that prevented him. The rabbit boy then asked what that girl meant to him. LeBlanc responded that she was like a crow flower growing from his body after falling into a play, carrying the corpses of words to heights he could never reach. She was his hope. Meanwhile, the army was advancing in full readiness. Belle and Adonis were in a carriage, and a warrior took Belle's sword, but couldn't lift it, dropping it to the ground. Min picked it up and apologized to the sword. The warrior told the woman with him that he could easily swing that little thing. Belle wondered who these two fools were. Suddenly, the rabbit boy appeared and told them they were nearing the catacombs, so they should stay alert. He didn't want any trouble and strictly forbade any improvisation. Belle assured him that she would be cautious. The boy next to her, named Perry, a duelist, told her not to let it bother her, explaining that the rabbit boy always found someone weak to bully. Annoyed, Belle asked who he was calling weak. Perry replied that she was doing her best. The warrior who had been carrying Belle's sword grabbed another warrior and apologized for not having time to take requests. The other warrior said he accidentally pierced the men in front of him and asked to be put in the vanguard. The scribe, Gwyn, agreed. Then, a person wearing a strange yellow outfit remarked that this was reckless and they wouldn't gain fame this way. As long as they fulfilled their duty, he wouldn't need to report anything to the king. Perry commented that his sword was bound and advised Belle to avoid attracting attention. The commander ordered the first team to halt. Belle disembarked to see the place and was shocked by the stale air and the smell of blood. She asked about the vanguard team and then saw that they were all injured and controlled, their eyes red. Odinus remarked that they had no hope. Belle responded that the vanguard team pitied them and expected them to take the stage and kill. This was no joke. Adnis told her it was a cruel joke, a joke of the king's, and it wasn't funny. All they could do now was survive enough to mock it in turn. Now, the symphony of swords would begin.
Belle holds Adonis's hand as they march forward to confront their enemy. The army enters a cave, and the conductor orders the mages to establish a 3-layer barrier composed of fire, light, and water. The vanguard advances, led by Gordon, but Belle notices they are getting too far ahead of the main force. The wings are sent to support them. However, when they arrive, the group is struggling against a giant spider. Gordon delivers a blow, thinking he has defeated the creature, but it explodes, releasing smaller spiders that overwhelm the army. The sheer number of spiders causes the barrier to collapse. Tiziano seizes this opportunity and takes control of the water portion of the barrier. She moves through it, cutting down the panicking knights. Adonis orders a retreat, but many soldiers are unable to escape. In the chaos, Belle encounters a frantic Bennett who demands to know what happened to Gordon, her love. Belle is initially relieved to see Gordon approaching, but her joy is short-lived when she realizes that he is already dead and being controlled by Tiziano. Belle defends herself from Gordon's attack, while Bennett, heartbroken, decides to put Gordon out of his misery by using magic arrows. As Bennett grieves, Belle tries to console her, but Gordon strikes again. Kitty sets him on fire, allowing Belle to deliver a final blow. Bennett, overwhelmed with emotion, tries to run off, but Belle stops her. Bennett, in her grief, attacks Belle, though Belle manages to break Bennett's blade. Kitty explains that mermaids like Bennett often build their identities around others. And with Gordon gone, Bennett's sense of self has collapsed. She adds that most mermaids maintain many shallow relationships as a safeguard. Belle holds Bennett, trying to comfort her. As Cassis and Gwyn arrive after escaping from monsters, Bennett recovers from her grief and offers Belle a hand to help her up. Together, they hear a strange sound and go to investigate. They find Adonis alive, but one of their comrades has fallen. Adonis takes the dead man's sword, which disgusts Cassis. Adonis dismisses the comment, pointing out that Tiziano, not the fallen, is their real enemy. Adonis reveals that Tiziano is deep within the cave, at a lake that draws both good and evil souls. When they reach the lake, they witness Tiziano reenacting a battle between good and evil. Using the corpses of the fallen, she controls the dead by embedding shards of her sword into their bodies. When Tiziano spots the group, she sends her zombies after them. Jin Buck, The conductor of the underdogs projects himself to direct the group. He explains that Tiziano had once been full of life when she proposed an alliance to defeat the top dogs, but her destructive state began after seeing Adonis again, which triggered memories of the man she loved most. Jin believes that unless they act quickly, they will all become her puppets, so he suggests they team up to defeat her. As a gesture of goodwill, Kitty returns Jinbok's watch, allowing him to lead their army. Gwyn devises their battle formations, but Cassis, sent by the king as an observer, cannot participate. As the final battle approaches, Adonis's father, revealed to be one of the defenders of Jin, discloses that their family's duty is to guard the catacomb, neutral in the fight between good and evil. The knights begin their assault on the first wave of zombies. Kitty erects a barrier, but Tiziano counters by flooding the ground with water, allowing the zombies to bypass the defenses. Jinbok baits the zombies into a trap, allowing Kitty to incinerate them with a fire spell. Despite their efforts, the party starts to become overwhelmed. During the battle, Adonis's glove is ripped off, forcing him to wield his sword with his bare hand. Belle is shocked to hear the blade cry as it begins to rot away in his hand. Meanwhile, Bennett is severely injured, taking a slash to her eye. Enraged, Belle fights back, cutting through the zombies. Bennett, moved by Belle's strength, undergoes a transformation, choosing Belle as her new reference point for building her personality. Jinbok points out to Gwyn that the zombies will keep coming unless they force Tiziano to engage directly. Gwyn, understanding her psychology, knows they must provoke her rage to make her reveal herself. Impressed by Gwyn's insight, Jin orders the group to move to the next area to begin the second phase of their plan. The Alliance rests and tends to their wounds before moving through the waterways. Adonis's father guides them through the darkness, a skill he assures Belle anyone can learn. They reach the Skyway Cemetery, known as the Garden of Death, where Jinbok reveals they will make their final stand. The cemetery is a sacred place in the catacomb, filled with raven blossoms that notify the bereaved of their loss. Jin apologizes to Adonis's father for turning the sacred place into a battlefield, but the man understands it is necessary. The conductor orders Rabbi Tia to erect a barrier around the cemetery, though Cassis objects, concerned that Tiziano could control the corpses resting in the graves. As the battle begins, zombies breach the barrier, causing the dead to rise from their graves. A tidal wave of water floods the area, forcing Jinbok to order a retreat to higher ground. As the last to move, Jinbok is caught by Tiziano, who swiftly takes his leg. Adonis and Belle return just in time to save Jinbok before he can be finished off. Jinbok signals Kitty to unleash a massive fire spell, which burns everything around and evaporates the water. Although the caretakers of the catacomb are saddened by their loss, they remain hopeful, believing they can rebuild since they still have the Raven Seeds. Tiziano sends Tank, like zombies, through the fire up to the summit where the Alliance is waiting. These massive zombies explode, leaving a residue on the ground. Tiziano uses this residue as a medium to summon more corpses and to strike down her enemies. Even Gwyn loses his arm, trying to stop her. Tiziano moves in to finish Jinbok, but Cassis sacrifices himself, using his body as a shield. This reveals Cassis's face, and with his remaining strength, he breaks the chains on his blade, landing a powerful attack on Tiziano and forcing her out of the liquid. Gwyn hands his sword to Mist to continue growing before he succumbs to his injuries. Meanwhile, Adonis faces off against Tiziano. It is revealed that her sword has the spell Legna, meaning the one who commands. Adonis demonstrates his excellent swordsmanship, landing critical hits on her. But Tiziano simply laughs and traps him in her dimension when he gets too close. Belle and Kitty quickly follow Adonis before the portal closes. Rabbi Tia casts a spell that helps them get their bearings in the new space and locate Adonis, who is using his familiar to fight Tiziano. Adonis modifies Perry's weapon and uses it to chip away at Tiziano, as if preparing her for a barbecue. Despite this, Tiziano continues to laugh, confusing Belle. Belle notices Tiziano's sword resembles the god's tree, and Kitty explains that it is a cancerous sword, although Belle doesn't fully understand. Kitty reassures her that she will when the time is right. Belle and Adonis work together to land the final blow, ending Tiziano's rampage. As she calms down, Tiziano clings to Adonis as her life force leaves her. After the battle, a ritual rain known as the funeral rain falls, cleansing the battlefield and guided by the music of the weather players. This rain absolves all grudges and washes away the blood. The knights hold a training session during the rain, and Belle engages in an intense sparring match with Gaff. Their session comes to a halt when Belle notices Gaff is injured. Gaff admits that he sustained the injury during a previous summons when he fought and killed a skilled priest of the catacomb, who was also Adonis's father. Belle, upset, walks away, ending their session. As Belle processes the news, she bumps into Sherry, a noblewoman who falls to the ground and laments the city's pain. Belle helps Sherry up, and the noblewoman remarks on how the blood from her nosebleed tastes like iron. Sherry, unfamiliar with city life, admits that she has been bumping into people and stumbling over stairs, but this is the first time she has gotten hurt. She also comments on Belle's large sword, revealing her lack of experience outside the castle. Belle cleans Sherry's face and realizes Sherry must be from nobility, especially when Sherry reveals she had an umbrella but threw it away, not knowing how to use it. This confirms Belle's suspicion about her being from a sheltered background. Sherry, starstruck, has a fangirl moment after Belle introduces herself, concerned that Sherry might catch a cold. Belle learns that Sherry actually called the rain with her song, as she is the castle's lead vocalist and can harmonize with both heaven and earth. After this introduction, Sherry reveals she is heading to see Gaff. Belle advises her to stop at Bennett's place for a change of clothes. Meanwhile, it is revealed that Gwen survived the previous battle, but lost his arm. Sherry is offered a hot bath, and Belle joins her to help her since Sherry doesn't know how to use it. During their conversation, Sherry reveals she is the daughter of King Rawhide. Once Sherry has changed, Belle takes her back to her room. Sherry, wishing to repay Belle for her kindness, offers to sing a song for her. Belle is deeply moved by Sherry's voice, but notices the toll it takes on her. Sherry gets lightheaded, but regains her composure when Gaff enters the room. The princess tells Gaff that Belle is even more impressive than he described. Gaff apologizes for any trouble Sherry may have caused and leaves with her, though Belle feels a bit conflicted. Later, Adonis meets with Keir and reveals that he has taken on the role of examiner, a royal inspector who visits knights with broken swords. This was the price he paid to gain access to sacred ashes. Adonis examines both Tiziano's and the centaur's swords, wanting to know if the resurrected blade had caused Tiziano's madness. He adds special ashes to the swords to forge a new blade. Keir assures him that the process doesn't create a fiend, and that Adonis now possesses a blade of immense strength. Adonis, relieved that the blade wasn't the cause of Tiziano's madness, meets with Belle. He tells her that he has come to terms with what happened. Belle is happy to hear this, but brings up how seeing Gaff with his arm around Sherry made her feel a bit annoyed and lonely. Bennett and Gwen were teasing Belle about being in love, but she didn't think that was the case. Adonis, observing the situation, believed it had more to do with Belle wishing to be like a princess, as she had different features. He confided that he liked the fact that she was featureless, and even wished he could get rid of his own fur and ears at times. Adonis went on to express his interest in having children with Belle someday, which made her blush. She told him that would only be possible if she ever fell in love with him. The conversation shifted to Adonis's inability to wield a sword. He revealed that it was the result of a curse placed on him at birth by a nomad who had visited the catacomb before his arrival. The nomad, seeking a funeral from the clan, was cursed And when Adonis' father cradled the nomad as he passed, the curse was passed on to his son. Though it didn't affect his father, it manifested in Adonis. Despite being cursed, Adonis became one of the top 4 knights of the land. Bel, feeling connected to his story, suggested they go on a journey together. Adonis agreed, confident it would never be boring with her around. Later, Sherry visited Bel to return a dress she borrowed from Bennett and discussed Bel's earlier comments about singing being difficult. Sherry had been singing since childhood and couldn't understand why Bel found it hard. Adonis then interrupted, inviting everyone to eat. Bel had the idea to gather her friends at the Nomads' hangout, where she requested a song from a bard. As Sherry listened, she cried, finally understanding what Bel had meant about the difficulty of singing. The princess later sent messenger birds to invite everyone to a ball at the castle as a way to thank them for their hospitality. On the day of the ball, Bel found herself dressed in the princess's elegant gown and adorned with expensive jewelry. However, the weight of her weapon broke a chair, startling the attendants. When she entered the ballroom, attendees commented on her appearance and a bold man grabbed her, calling her scrawny. Bel politely smiled, but warned him that touching her without permission could cost him an arm, crushing his hand in the process. Bennett noticed how beastly her manners were despite her appearance, while Gwen defended Bel's actions, feeling a hero like her shouldn't tolerate disrespect. Adonis joined their group, and they all joked about dressing in their raid uniforms to stand out. Adonis, perhaps influenced by the festive atmosphere, made a lewd comment about Bel's appearance, which earned him a punch in the gut from her. Gaff interrupted to ask Adonis to join him, while the head knight also complimented Bel, making her feel shy. Sherry then began her performance, and the room dimmed as she sang, showing improvement. Bel was about to leave when Kitty stopped her, while the Rabbi Tia praised her appearance and took her hand to dance, explaining that being empty meant she was someone who sought to escape all limits. Meanwhile, Adonis and Gaff discussed Tiziana's sword, which the lead knight had broken. Gaff also confessed that he had killed Adonis' father in combat. Though Adonis already knew, Gaff revealed he had his father's sword and asked Adonis to return the swords of the fallen knights. Adonis agreed and challenged Gaff to a duel. Before the duel could commence, Keir joined them, causing tension to rise. Keir cut Gaff, triggering a reaction from the priests, indicating that their god commanded them to strike him down. The priests attacked Keir, but he swiftly defeated them. Adonis, horrified by Keir's actions, attacked, but was also cut. Back in the ballroom, Sherry's performance was interrupted by a divine message, warning everyone about a new fiend manifesting through Keir. Bel was ordered to confront the fiend, but Sherry begged her to run. Keir stormed into the ballroom, easily defeating Gwen and Bennett. Bel retaliated by throwing a couch at him, with Kitty enhancing it with fire magic, though Keir blocked it. Bel continued to fight, eventually clashing with Keir in a bloody exchange. As the battle progressed, Bel realized the true source of corruption wasn't the fiends or the knights' swords, but the god tree they worshipped. In a final clash, Bel defeated Keir, who acknowledged her strength before collapsing. Afterward, Bel learned that Adonis had locked himself inside his bamboo familiar. She refused to begin her final trial until he appeared. Spending the night in his room, she forced him to show himself, where he revealed that he wasn't ready to journey with her due to unresolved issues. However, he promised to be there for the trial and apologized before disappearing. The next day, Bel took her test, where apparitions of those who supported her appeared. She failed the trial, but remained determined to become a nomad and leave Park City despite being offered permanent residence by King Rahid. Adonis, meanwhile, faced his own trial, cutting down masked guards to reach the king. He, too, failed to resonate with the piano, revealing his lack of purpose for a journey. Despairing, Adonis unleashed a dark force before retreating to his room, where he confessed to Bel that he had never felt a mother's warmth and feared going to the place where dead knights rested. He begged Bel to cut him, but when she refused, he became forceful, causing her to begin rotting. Rabbi Tia intervened, and Adonis fled in shame. He later found himself transported to the realm of the army of insatiable emptiness, where he was greeted by Drum, who presented him with a sword that resonated with his powers. With this, our Season 1 comes to an end.